Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Rick. Kyle and I are bringing you another episode of Only Football. We are talking Aaron Rodgers emerging from a hole, Lamar Jackson sweepstakes. We're talking Daniel Jones trying to get $45 million a year. We're also talking Eric Bieniemy to Washington, Bobby Wagner being released, and Vance Joseph goes back to Denver. Let's get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Only Football Off-Season Edition. I'm Kyle, that's Rick.
I'm Rick, that's Kyle.
Aaron Rodgers has emerged from the darkness. He ended his retreat early, as the owner of this retreat in Oregon has stated. So now he can go back to living a normal life. The owner probably was like never had this type of publicity in his life from any of his guests.
Kyle, we have the groundhog emerging from his hole and maybe seeing a oh, wait, nope, that's Aaron Rodgers emerging from his hole. And I think he saw his shadow, which means he's not playing football next year. Let's give it up to retiring Aaron Rodgers.
No. He's a Bears fan, and obviously.
How could you tell? What gave it away?
The hat.
Oh, okay.
The flag in the background. The overall attitude regarding Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah, that's a big giveaway. You're right.
So he initially told Pat McAfee that he was going to spend 4 days in total darkness to contemplate all things.
Yep.
All things doesn't just include football, but we're a football podcast, so we're going to talk about those things that he contemplated.
Mm-hmm.
Spending time with yourself, spending time alone. I've had the opportunity a couple times in my life to do something very similar to what I guess being in solitary confinement would be, without actually being in prison. And you really do. I heard one time I was reading a book about meditation, and it said if you can go 45 seconds without having a thought, whether it's a good thought, a bad thought, that is like a milestone.
Yeah.
So all we do all day is think, think about the future, think about the past, think about the present, think about everything. Think about what the things that are happening even mean. It's like we do a lot of thinking. And if he was able to stop thinking, maybe that would help him make his decision. Well, as weird as that sounds, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. Maybe he was just bored the whole time and he was like, this is dumb. He did end the retreat early.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, so I think he was originally going to spend 4 days in total darkness.
Yes, yeah.
And
right.
I think he spent 3.
Okay.
I don't know. The article says he ends his retreat early. So I'm assuming he ended it maybe after 3 days. I feel like it had to have been at least 3 days. So he was inside of a cave, I guess, that he had the ability to turn the lights on himself if he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like, if you're a visual person, something you can think about. But
I actually read an article on ESPN about what it looked like too, and it looks more like, if you guys have seen Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit movies, that type of stuff, it looks like one of those Hobbit type of houses where it's partially underground. There's a door leading up. It looks like a small mound. If you can picture a small mound, and then at the front is like a door, a wooden door. And there's some stairs leading down to the space, which is only like 300 square feet. I read up on it. It's got a queen size mattress, a meditation mat, a bathroom. Like you said, he ended it early because the door is not locked. You're not locked up in that room. It's like dimly lit in there. But yeah, I saw it, and I just thought it was really interesting. What I expected was kind of like what you were saying, like a cave-like type of thing. Like, here's a bed, and that's it. And you're in darkness, and we deliver meals 3 times a day or whatever it is, and that's it. You kind of just go from there. But it looked, honestly, from the picture that I saw, it looked really calming, really serene. It looked kind of cool, not gonna lie.
Yeah, and there were people on ESPN I saw that were like, I don't, they were like, oh, I thought it was gonna be like a cave, and it's like it has crown molding. It was so nice, and I'm like, um, okay, like get off your high horse. You can
Crown
only
molding, huh?
think about the crown molding for so long. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Before you're bored. I
yeah.
mean, that's just honestly, most people, if they just had their phones taken away for an entire day, would be super edgy. You
That
know?
would, yeah, yeah, that would be huge. Honestly, if you took my phone away, I'd probably kill you.
Yeah, you'd be like, dude, give me my phone back. Like,
That's
uh,
fine. I'm just gonna go to my office and be on my computer then. Fuck
yeah.
you.
So it is difficult to do, and actually, there's who's the Mark Wahlberg was on USA Today
Yeah.
talking about giving up. Um, I don't know if it was social media, but he was giving something up for Lent, which because he's a Catholic. So that you do
Hmm.
see different cultures have different traditions and ways of trying to take away vices in order to
Hmm.
get more focus and maybe bring back meaning and things that are really important. So Rogers is probably at this point now. So I'll just ask you this: do you think he has his decision right now?
Um, I would say he does, and I would say he has a decision like made. His mind is made up because before, I saw an interview, and maybe you saw the same interview with Pat McAfee on his podcast, where they were very much like, so, or Pat McAfee asked him, so is this thing like you may or may not come back? Like, is that still a thing? And he's like, oh, yeah, 100%. Aaron Rodgers was like, 100%. I don't know if I'm coming back to play football or not, which for the last 3 years has been kind of the same tune, right? But regardless of that fact, that's why I think, and when he was talking to McAfee, he was saying about how he goes into this, how he kind of just goes into his own mind, thinks about what makes him happy. He went to Peru to try ayahuasca, all that stuff. That's why I think after all this is said and done, he has that decision made up. Um, what just I guess astounds me in a way is that uh, I don't know. It's just that he can do these things and have that decision in his mind afterwards. Like, don't get me wrong. I know doing all this stuff opens your mind, expands your mind. You think about your happiness, you think about your life. And this is Aaron Rodgers we're talking about. He is no stranger to controversy. He is no stranger to, I will do what I want to do if it makes me happy in the end. It doesn't matter. Like, this man doesn't talk to his fucking family, for Christ's sakes, right? Like, he doesn't give a shit. He really doesn't care. As long as it makes him happy in the end. And it's kind of something that you can't, as a person, like maybe if you are down in the dumps, you're like, wow, I can envy that. But I think, to your question, I think he's made up his mind. And I think he's not going to play football anymore. I think just off the jump, I
Wow.
think he's done. Because next year kicks in his extension. His 50, let me see, 50, what is it?
The amount
50,
of
yeah,
100.
$59.5 million kicks in next year if he plays next year for the Packers. So in a sense, the Packers haven't paid him a dime from his extension, but it all does depend on whether or not he plays for them next year.
Yeah, and I think when you think about money, I mean that. Stop it. That is. By the way, Woody's back, and I'm back, so it feels good to be back in the studio
Kyle's
and
back.
have my dog again to yell at in the middle of our podcast. Woody, stop. So he's not a person that really needs money, right? And I know,
Yeah, he was very,
you
very
know,
blessed to have the amount of money he has.
yeah, he has a lot of money at this point in his life. And I don't think somebody like Aaron Rodgers really needs any more money to be happy. Even when you see him like at his press conferences, it's like, t-shirt and
Hmm.
no jewelry, just kind of maybe like a ring on that was like from a special rock or something. Like he doesn't really like, have a lot of flashy things, it seems like,
Yeah.
from or at least what he lets the public see of him.
Hmm.
So I don't think the money part is driving him. And if that's not driving him, I do think people that are really, I guess, just like they think about every decision they do, because the reality is if you're going to play football, it takes a lot. There's a lot of traveling. There's a lot of, practice and meetings and not just that, but at this point in your career now, your job is to be a mentor. And we talked about also about, is he hindering Jordan Love in his development? Is he doing what Brett Favre did to him? And at what point is that you cross that line between helping and now you're hurting, Jordan Love? So I do think it is a huge decision to make. And I know for me, I'm moving on from a job that I've had for the last 5 years, and I have just followed my company around. And eventually, my time is going to be up and I'm going to move on, and I'm looking at places to move. And my family always asks me, like, where you're going, don't you? You're going to Denver. And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, how do you not know? And it's like, I had this moment where I was like, this is how Aaron Rodgers feels all the time.
Yeah.
It's like people are telling you, like my mom, she'll be like, Uncle Wolf told me that you're going back to Florida. And I'm like, I never even talked to Uncle Wolf. And like this whole family's like talking to themselves. And I'm like, no, like as soon as I know, you'll know. And I don't know. And it's just crazy. But when you're in a situation that's like, people assume that you have to like be leaning away. And sometimes that's not even true. Like sometimes you're not even leaning one way or another. And I think Aaron Rodgers is in that same situation. Yeah. So when people like, I asked you, what do you think? I'm not sure. Like, I feel like it could just be as true that he's retiring as he's coming back to play. He could say, I'm going to go play for another team. And I really feel like I have no way to, I feel like I'd be making a guess no matter what I decided, like throwing a dart, just wherever it lands, like I'll just take that opinion, but I really don't know. And I think whatever the decision is going to be, it's going to be the right decision because of how much effort he puts into these decisions. So if he thinks I don't have, 100% to give to my team anymore, I think he'll make the right decision and not play. If he's like, I can run it back and I can play at a high level and I want to win one more trophy, Super Bowl maybe, then I think he makes the right decision that way. I don't think there's a scenario where he makes the wrong decision. So I'm just kind of giving this a little bit of time, but it's not really fun as a talk, podcast sports show to be like, we don't know. But sometimes, sometimes it's the truth. And I think with Aaron Rodgers, I think there's not a bigger wild card, that comes to mind when it comes to these types of decisions. But it does affect a lot of other dominoes, and everyone waits for this one to fall. And that's what happened to Denver last year. So it's like, for instance, the New York Jets are a hot name that have discussed having Aaron Rodgers on their team, as well as the Las Vegas Raiders. Yep. And what do you do if you're the Las Vegas Raiders and Lamar Jackson, and we'll talk about that later, has contract and they can't come to terms on something, and Mark Davis, the owner, says, hey, let's give him like 2 first-round picks and pay him what he wants and bring in Lamar Jackson. Yeah. But then they're like, well,
how can anyone turn that down?
Yeah, but then they're like, what about Aaron Rodgers? What if we get him for 2 years because that we prefer Aaron Rodgers? So now it stalls that organization, and then Lamar Jackson ends up getting traded for Justin Fields, and it's like,
whoa. I'm just kidding. I definitely get where you're coming from. And real quick before we move on, let's acknowledge the chat real quick. Liam, our trivia leader, what's up? How's it going?
What up, Liam?
We've got Jinja in the chat. Jinja, cheers, brother.
Good to have you.
James Rufert. James, how's it going? Thanks for joining the stream. Cheers. He said he'll be a good backup. And then Tyler, also in the chat. Cheers, Tyler. He said, I doubt Rodgers has his decision made because I don't think he's talked to the Packers front office about it. He's going to have more conversations with the Packers about the direction they are going. And it's almost to your point, like you said, Kyle. There are other dominoes or other things that you need that are waiting on his decision almost in a way, right? And
all the way.
Yeah, just like Tyler said. What about the direction that they're going? And you listed all these options: the Jets, the Vegas, the Raiders, right? The Vegas Raiders. Will Lamar Jackson be in the mix? Like all these things. Like what is Aaron Rodgers doing? What will Lamar Jackson do? Like these are big dominoes that need to fall in order for the entire picture to look clearer. So like you said, like it's not. I personally think that he's done. And you listed all the things that you need to, that you need to commit to a football season: traveling, playing the game. 39 years old, playing the game at 39. I mean, Brady was. It seems to be 1 in a million what Brady did. But all these things you have to commit to: the hitting, the play calling, maybe the decisions aren't the ones you want to necessarily take part in, coaching wise. But that's why I say I think he's done. I don't know. Do you look at this and are leaning one way or the other with what he has possibly made his decision on?
Yeah. So I was just looking at this. So okay. So at the age Aaron Rodgers is right now, which I believe his birthday is in December, he would if he were Tom Brady. All right, Tom Brady at Aaron Rodgers' age now. Just was it? They just lost the Super Bowl to the Eagles. So
okay.
I mean, that seems like so long ago that the Patriots were in the Super Bowl against the Eagles.
Yeah.
But like you said, 1 in a million. Tom Brady's 1 in a million. So to Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he's going to retire this year. I think now these are like wishful thinking, so keep that in mind. The way it has been, like Peyton Manning retired, okay, and then Drew Brees retired, and then like Ben Roethlisberger's retirement, and then Tom Brady retired, and it just feels like Aaron Rodgers is kind of the last one, and I don't want to see him retire at the same year as Tom Brady. Like I feel like if he retired this year, I don't know. I would like to see he representing an older generation of quarterbacks all by himself for a year. And I don't know if he is done. I mean, you look at the way he plays. I saw countless times that he's handing the ball off and then the running back cuts back and now he's the lead blocker and he's running downfield and he gets like lit up by a linebacker.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like that's not something that you see from a person that's retiring. The way Tom Brady looked in his last game that we saw against the Cowboys, that to me looked like a guy that was at the end of his lifespan in the NFL. And the way Peyton Manning looked in that Super Bowl looked like a guy that was past his shelf life. And but we have seen people retire and you assume they had more left in the tank. I think of Drew Brees. Like, was Drew Brees really done? Or did he just decide he wanted to spend more time with his family and move on to the next chapter?
Drew Brees was done. His arm was absolutely done. He was like Peyton Manning in his last year. Yeah, dude. He couldn't throw more than like 30 yards.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, it was pretty bad.
Fact check it.
Fact check it. No, yeah, And I kind of feel bad now because we talked about that era of quarterback. Like, that's it. We're done. We're moving on. And I forgot Aaron Rodgers. At least I did. So I feel bad. And as a Bears fan, I can still look to Aaron Rodgers and be like, he was part of that era. He was more on the he wasn't necessarily that era, part of that really era, because he came in like 5, 6, 7 years later in the league. But the impact he had during that era was it's unmistakable. He made an impact during that era with Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, all these guys. So I kind of feel bad that that we were just like moved on from that. But I don't know, man. I like I said, you think he's coming back, but if he does come back, does he play for the Packers? I think that's the biggest question. Because there's 3 options, right? Like he retires, he comes back, or he comes back for another team, right? Like he comes back for the Packers or comes back for another team.
Well, here's what's really interesting about it. And as much as I'm in Rodgers' corner because I just feel like the media needs a villain, and it's like it's Aaron Rodgers for them. Because they make fun of the ayahuasca, they made fun of the darkroom thing. Colin Cowherd was like, this hipster from California. And I'm like, could you imagine talking about like Lamar Jackson being like this thug from Compton? You know what I mean? Everyone would lose their mind, but it's okay to make fun of him when you don't understand that it's a spiritual thing he's doing.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just like, I understand a lot of, the media just needing a villain. But one thing I kind of do wonder about Aaron Rodgers is if you were going to go year to year, why'd you sign a 3-year deal? So last year,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you were deciding, okay, what's it going to be? You telling Bronco fans, we'll see. You know what I mean? We hired Nathaniel Hackett. Seems like the pieces are lining up. And then he goes, I want to be a Green Bay Packer. And I'm old school in the way where you're a Packer, you die a Packer. There's no other team. Like all these, it's changed. It used to be that you would never, ever like associate yourself with a rival team. And now you
yeah.
see, Melvin Gordon go from the Chiefs or the Chargers to the Broncos to the Chiefs. And he's been like posting videos of the Super Bowl ring being like
I got carried.
Yeah, you saw those? They're so funny.
Yeah, they're funny.
He's really owning it. He's taking the Eminem approach. If you make fun of yourself, other people can't, and it's working for him really well. But Brett Favre, when he became a Viking, it was like, what is going on? Like Packer fans were booing Brett Favre running onto Lambeau, which is just something you never would have thought you would see. So I just think in that way, Aaron Rodgers is like, I wouldn't play for another team. I want to be a Green Bay Packer. But if the Packers front office doesn't align with those same views, then they have to, branch off and do their own thing. Because he's going to meet with the front office again, and they're going to say, hey, we need you to restructure if you're going to stay. What if he's just like, you know what? I want to make as much money as possible and go to the Jets. They'll give me $55 million for 1 year.
Yeah.
And then go live in New York City for a year and be on billboards and just experience what it's like to be. Because look, being the biggest quarterback in Green Bay is like, I mean, you're like a god to that. If you've ever driven through Green Bay, it's like you just drive through a neighborhood. It's like turn left on Debbie Street, and then you turn left on Debbie Street, and then it's like there's Lambeau Field off in the corner, and you're just like, wait a minute, this isn't a neighborhood? It doesn't. It's like it's unlike
in the
anything.
Middle of something. Yeah.
Anybody that has gone to a game at Lambeau has probably felt equally as weirded out as anybody that was going for the first time, just because it is so weird. It's like usually you're in the middle of a city like Denver, and it's like there's where the Broncos play, Avalanche are over there. It's like Green Bay, you're literally in someone's backyard. And it's like, so what if Aaron Rodgers wants to know what it feels like to go to a place like New York City, all right? A place where like, he could be on billboards and like be kind of like a savior for a town that really needs a quarterback. He might want to, just see what that avenue would feel like, but he's made it clear that he wants to be a Packer. So I just feel almost like he might have worn out his welcome with the 1 year thing. Yeah. And it might be the Packers that now everything we've heard is that the Packers want Aaron Rodgers back. So I don't know, how much grace there is for him, but I just don't understand why not sign a 1 year deal last year if you were going to leave. And I know there was like an option after the first year to leave.
Well,
but it's like, why even do that?
And this is just my like conspiracy theory mind working, right? Like, what if he signed that deal knowing full well that that deal does not kick in until he actually takes a snap or shows up for training camp in 2023, knowing also that they can't sign Devontae Adams, and Devontae Adams is eventually going to go to another team. And then he's like, you know what? I retire. I unretire. I want to get traded to Las Vegas. I want to go back with Devontae Adams. I want to play with him. I wanted to get my good friend Devontae Adams off the Packers because I'm not going to be here next year. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these things. That's just my conspiracy theorist mind. And it's also my Bears mind. It's also my Bears mind going, I need Aaron Rodgers the fuck out of the NFC North because it's time for Justin Fields to emerge.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. And I just don't think Devontae Adams is enough personally because when he was going through this in Green Bay, you never – like we said, when Devontae Adams left to the Raiders, it was like they didn't consult each other about it. And Devontae Adams talks about Aaron Rodgers in a really, high regard. Like, oh, he's the best quarterback in the world. But at the same time, like, it's like any job where, those are your coworkers. They're not your friends. That's kind
Hmm.
of an old school mentality of compartmentalizing. And I think Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are the same way, where it's like, I'm not going to make my career decisions depending on you, right?
Yeah.
Devontae
Yeah.
Adams signed that deal before Rodgers even said he was staying, because he was like, I'm
Hmm.
not going to wait around for him. Like, I'm going to do my own thing. I've
Yeah.
established my own name, my own net worth, and I'm going to go, I'm not going to wait around like a loser. So I don't know if it's enough, but I do think it's an incentive if he
Hmm.
did want to go. But I don't think it's the thing that would, like, take him over the top with the Raiders.
For sure.
But yeah, I think it'll come down to the front office in a lot of ways. That's why they're going to meet again. And after that meeting, probably we'll have some information, because he said he didn't want to wait as long as he did last year. But I feel like we're getting pretty close, because
Yeah.
when Nathaniel Hackett got hired, it was like late February, or no, it was early March that Aaron Rodgers. We're pretty much back there. Yeah.
Yeah, we really are. We'll see. Obviously, I think he's done in just general, but there's also again the possibility of him going on another team. If he goes to another team, I'll be very happy for him. Obviously, Kyle thinks he's coming back to the Packers because he signed that deal. You guys let us know what you think Aaron Rodgers' decision is, or if his decision is that he hasn't made a decision. So let us know. But let's move on now to another quarterback situation that is brewing in Baltimore. That is Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson did not speak publicly during all of last year during the regular season about his contract negotiations. He wanted a fully guaranteed deal that was basically the same deal that Deshaun Watson got in Cleveland. 5 years, $230 million for that deal. He turned down a deal that was a 5 year, $250 million in September that included $133 million guaranteed. Now, the difference between that, right, is you look at it and you're like, well, that's more money. Well, he wanted the entirety of that contract to be guaranteed. The Ravens weren't going to do that, so they were just like, never mind, And obviously they didn't get the deal done, and Lamar Jackson was like, that's it. We're not negotiating during the season because I'm laser focused on playing football right now. Basically betting on himself, which a lot of players do, and usually, I think more often than not, come out on top of that. Now, I believe what the Ravens can do, they can trade him, or they can put on I believe a franchise tag on him, which would be a lot of money. I think it's like $35 million for a quarterback this year, whatever the case might be. But I guess that kind of comes down to the question, Kyle. Like, is Lamar Jackson going to suit up as a Raven again?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Why not?
So it's at a point right now where Lamar Jackson, and we talked about this all last season, right? Not having an agent and having his mom represent him has
Yeah.
been one of the Achilles heels of his kind of contract negotiations going limbo. It's just anytime you're going to get a deal, right? The goal is to always capitalize when your value is at its highest. And I would say right now Lamar Jackson's value is at its lowest it's ever been. And the Ravens had an opportunity to see him, and there's questions about his health. Can he stay healthy for a full season?
Yep.
And that is a very important question. The best abilities, availability. It's cliche, but it's true. And if you've ever had a quarterback that is hurt all the time, you probably know what that feels like. Jimmy Garoppolo never could, play a full season, just
Yep.
ankle, this, that, little things like that. If you've ever had an amazing defensive player that is just a stud when he's on the field, but it's like he's not always on the field. I think like Joey Bosa gets hurt a lot, kind of.
TJ Watt,
TJ
JJ
Watt,
Watt, like you can
yeah.
go down the line. Yeah.
You go down the line, and now we're talking though. We're not talking about an edge rusher that's getting $25 million a year. We're talking about a quarterback that's asking for like over $200 million in guarantees.
Guaranteed completely.
I do feel like if you you are you're worth the value that people see in you. So you may be worth $240 million to the Colts because the Colts have been on a quarterback carousel for since
It's like
Andrew Luck
4
retired,
years, 5 years.
and
Yeah.
they can't get it right. So I guarantee you to Indianapolis, you're worth that. So I feel like right now, if you're the Ravens, it's time to rip the Band-Aid off because I don't think they're going to come to a deal with Lamar because if they were going to, it would have been done. Like the reason this is taking so
Yeah.
long is because both sides are probably too far off for any type of compromise, you know? So I
Hmm.
do think it's time to pull the band-aid off. And I'd also feel like the Ravens have made it clear, like from just having a black quarterback standpoint, they don't want to be the people that didn't pay a black quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And it's a real side that the Ravens have talked about, but you also have to make sure when you pay somebody, you're paying the right guy. It has to be like they can't just pay him to pay him if they don't think he can play a full entire season. Like this is a guy
Hmm.
that is really good, won an MVP, but he also has only been to one playoff game and had the worst playoff performance
Next.
of like any player in like a decade.
Yeah, like him and Kyler Murray are like bottom two at like their playoff games. They're bad.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that's the other thing that makes it tricky. The Cardinals paid Kyler Murray $240 million of guarantees. Kyler Murray was not also worth $240 million, but he was to Arizona. And
Yeah.
it's okay to say you may be worth this to somebody else, but to me, I the Ravens don't spend $240 million on quarterbacks that can't place, a full
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
We just don't do that here. But maybe Indianapolis does. Maybe
Hmm.
some other teams that may be looking for a franchise quarterback are. And I just think Lamar Jackson is. Here's the real question though: do you think other teams would pay him what he's looking for? Because I do think maybe the Colts would. And there's also been talks about maybe trading for Justin Fields and
Yeah.
then getting that first round pick as well.
Yeah.
Um, or no, they would have to pay the first round pick. I forgot. There's like a lot of different things. And I actually wanted to get your opinion on some of the Justin Fields stuff because there was
For
even
sure.
talks about Justin Fields getting traded to the Colts for a first round pick. And then the because you guys got Justin Fields at what, 16th overall?
No, it was actually 11th overall, 11th or 12th, something like that. It was a Giants pick. I remember that much
But
in the
you could
2019 draft
they
or
could make an
2020.
argument that Justin Fields, as well as he's been playing, some people feel like he doesn't have the ceiling that Bryce Young has. People are
Yeah.
really high in Bryce Young. So it's like if Bryce Young goes on to have an 18-year career and being, a Hall of Famer, maybe now is a time where Justin Fields' value is at an all-time high. And this is the gamble of being in the NFL is deciding
Yep. Yep.
what a player is worth at this time and what he will be worth moving forward into the future.
Hmm.
Lamar Jackson, unfortunately, his value is at an all-time low. Probably no, it's probably lower like when he was drafted in the second round. But
Yeah.
um,
In terms of playing wise, yes, this is the lowest it's been.
yeah, and now the question is, and I don't know if sitting out the playoff game helped him at all. I think it hurt him.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they
True.
could have maybe even won that game against the Bengals,
Yeah.
had Lamar been on the field. And then look at that. Like if he won that playoff game, I bet you the deal would have been a lot easier to put the ink on the paper for the Ravens.
Hmm.
But now that's like there's just a lot of things that just seem like what is he missing? Why is all the publicity that he's getting, why does it feel like what we saw last year is just not worth, because the worst thing you can do is pay him $240 million and not be great. Like if you
Hmm.
pay someone that kind of money, we have to be great and he has to be worth it. Like Patrick Mahomes, $500 million. So we did it our last episode. All of the receivers and all of the running backs are being paid the same amount as Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek. Yeah.
Okay, so
And they won a
Tyreek Hill
Super Bowl.
and they won the Super Bowl. That's like 6 players getting paid what one player's getting. So the Dolphins can do that because they're not paying Tua. But once they pay Tua, they can't do that, right? So that's the question is, once we pay our quarterback that kind of money, he has to be so good that we can win a Super Bowl with Sky Moore and Marquise Valdez-Scantling. Like, we have to be able to win Super Bowls with people. And is Lamar Jackson good enough to win Super Bowls? Because we've always said the Ravens don't have wide receivers. The Ravens don't have wide receivers. They're not helping him.
Yeah.
Well, the Chiefs didn't have receivers either. I mean, they just made these guys good. That's what great quarterbacks do. They don't need like a bunch of good receivers. So that's also concerning, because you're going to be in a position where you can't pay for guys like Hopkins and stuff once you bring him in. And if you bring him in and you're not winning, you don't even have the salary cap now to go out and get guys in free agency. And now you just have an overpaid quarterback that, you can't even get out of the deal without getting 70 dead cap money. This is what Broncos are in with Russell Wilson. I know it's like you just have to stick with him, and you can't. You don't have any money to get new people, so you have to.
You have to just wait it out at that point.
Yeah, and it's just, I understand why the Ravens at this point wouldn't want to make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. But do you see that side of it? Or do you think the Ravens should have paid him? I think if they would have paid him like 2 years ago, it would have been a lot cleaner for everybody. The contract would have been better because Kyler Murray didn't get $240 million guaranteed, which raised the bar. And the bar keeps going up, but Lamar Jackson's value is going down. So there's this big, gap between them that continues to grow as quarterbacks get paid more money and Lamar Jackson performs, lower every year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say terribly.
You make a lot of great points in that, and Jinja actually agrees with you. The Colts should trade our pick and next year's first to go all out for Lamar, then lock him up. We spend money on linebackers and a shit O-line, so why not a good QB? That's a great idea. And like you said, he's worth that much to the Colts, who, like you said, have had garbage quarterbacks the last 4 years. In terms of for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, like you said, the absolute lowest value right now is that's where Lamar Jackson's at. The thing is, I still think if the Ravens don't pay him, man, it's going to be a tough go to be a Ravens fan. And I don't know. I don't know what to think, because if we do it where, kind of like what Jin just said, if they trade him to the Colts, they get their 4th pick, right? Or 3rd pick, whatever the Colts are, 4th, 5th. Now the Ravens are in the market for a quarterback. Do they trade up with the Bears? Do they, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, all these wheels start turning. I still think he's 24, 25, 26 years old, however old Lamar Jackson is. Second unanimous MVP next to Brady. His values are at an all-time low, like we were saying, but his ceiling is still so high. It is still very high. He can run the ball. He can pass the ball with his Booby Miles, right? He can run and he can pass. And he could cook. He could cook a dinner for you in an hour. All sorts of shit. Paint
your neighbor's fence.
Yeah. It's just that's what I think. If the Ravens don't pay him, they're missing out on a generational talent. But again, you got guys like Jinja who's a Colts fan who's like, dude, let's trade for him. I don't care. I don't care what the money is. Let's trade for Lamar Jackson because he is worth it to me.
There's a poll right now. If you're the Ravens, would you give Lamar Jackson Deshaun Watson's contract, 5 years, 230, fully guaranteed? 39% of the people said yes. 61 said no.
Wow.
But there's only been 271 votes. So
okay, so we'll wait until that gets into the thousands, because when you look at it too, if it's 5 years, 230, and you look at what Mahomes just got, you kind of are looking at what Josh Allen will get. You're kind of wondering what Joe Burrow's going to get. I think that's relatively cheap for a former MVP quarterback. I think that's relatively cheap for what did Mahomes get? $500 million for 10 years? That's basically
That's a good
still
deal.
more than that's still more than half of what or sorry, that's less than half years and money that you have to pay Lamar.
Yeah, he's the fifth. He has the fifth best contract
Yeah.
of
I
quarterbacks.
I just I think if you're the Ravens, I think it's kind of dumb not to pay him. The guaranteed money obviously is like that thing where it's like, okay, dude, we're gonna give you basically half of Mahomes' contract, but we were only gonna guarantee you 133, which was more than Kyler and which was more than Wilson.
Yeah.
Technically, if we're talking guaranteed money, it was more than that. I think they're gonna miss out. As far as like the Justin Fields stuff, like I really hope they don't trade for Lamar. I want Justin Fields in Chicago forever and ever and ever and ever.
I think also what about like 4 years, 160 million? Well, because the problem is that's what Dak Prescott makes, and I would rather have Lamar Jackson than Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Any day of the week. So it's just it's I think they will miss out. If Lamar Jackson goes somewhere else, he's going to be good somewhere else. And you look at their ability to score 40 points, and then when he got injured in the Broncos game, they didn't score more than like 12 points in like 5 straight games. And it was like, wow,
Yeah.
he really is like the entire offense for the Ravens. So it makes you wonder, like, what I don't know. I'm a little torn. Like, part of me is like his value is low right now, but I also feel like he might be the heart and soul of the Ravens. Like when he's gone,
Yeah.
if you thought Tyler Humphrey, which I did last season, I thought he could come in and do what Lamar Jackson does because of how well he played in 2020. And then that just wasn't true. That wasn't the case because he came in and couldn't score a lot of points. But that's why I feel like they just have to like have this conversation. Are you paying me or not? Here's my number. It's written down on paper. Yes or no. And if it's no, can you tell me about it? Because I want to, go sign with the Colts. I want to go sign with somebody else. And the fact that they haven't done that, it's just weird that he's negotiating all by himself and has no agent. You know what I mean? Because an agent it's like going to court with no lawyer. It's like even if you didn't do anything wrong, you're going to get, all the wrong side of the verdicts because you didn't have a lawyer.
And that's one of the, like you said it yourself. He does not have an agent. He is negotiating with himself or his mom is, whatever the case may be now. That's just a shitty thing to do with your employer, man. It works for people like us who were like, hey, I can't afford an agent. You'd never work with agents. Then that makes sense. When we're talking about millions of dollars, years, performance, a moneymaker like the NFL, you need a fucking agent. And real quick before we go on, Bill is in the chat. Bill, cheers. He said he's just finished work and he's cracking his first White Claw. Love to hear it.
Hell yeah.
So that's huge for Lamar, man. It's rough to be in his position. I think if the Ravens and actually Ginger makes a good point. If you know your quarterback is injury prone, you need a decent backup, not a Huntley, right?
Yeah.
I think I
thought Huntley was decent.
He is, but like I don't think he's a game manager. He's more like, hey, we're going to do Lamar's offense with you instead of like, all right, here are the basic routes to get you to get this game and to keep this game where we're at, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it be a win or like keep it close at least. Like, hey, this drive is to go get a field goal. If you can do this, we get points on the board, and that's all we need you to do. I think at the end of the day, you have to pay Lamar if you're the Ravens.
Yeah, because here's also what you don't want to happen. He goes to the Colts, and let's say which as long as you have John Harbaugh, you're always going to be, competitive. I don't think the Ravens would roll over. It would be like, it wouldn't even be as bad as I think the Saints when they lost Drew Brees. Like I think the Ravens will still find a way to win because of how good of a coach John Harbaugh is. But at the same time, now you have to see the Colts in the AFC Championship game. It's like
Yeah.
it may be not so much about them wanting Lamar Jackson, but
Mm-hmm.
not wanting Lamar Jackson to get in the way of them on the
Yes.
way to a Super Bowl.
Yes.
So that's
Exactly.
another reason to sign him.
Because not only do you miss out on like if he balls out and he's like this better star, you have to see that guy in the same conference in
Yeah.
what you were expecting to be a playoff game. Like you said, if you see Lamar Jackson, a quarterback that you had in the palm of your hand, and you just let go, and then now he's beating you in an AFC divisional round or a wild card round or something like that, then you're just like double fucked. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Then it just hurts even more. So
God forbid Kenny Pickett gets traded for Lamar Jackson and like 3 first-round picks, and then all of a sudden Lamar's in a Steelers uniform
don't
coming
tell
into.
Liam that. He fucking loves Pickett. All right, so we'll find out what it is. It's going to be a long offseason, I think, for these guys. You know, the first two quarterbacks we're talking about is Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson, two guys who are controversial in their own way, and are obviously dealing with it with just a conundrum, I think, this offseason. And real quick little plug for Star 6 Media. Thank you guys for joining us here, not only in the chat but listening. We are brought to you by Star 6 Media. So go listen to all of our podcasts. Go check out all of our live streams, all of the videos that we put up here at Only Football. And go check out Star 6 Media on Instagram at Star 6 Media. We finally got over 100 followers on Instagram. So, good for
Thanks,
us.
guys.
Yeah. Again, part of being following us on Instagram is getting to see our schedule on there for all the shows. We're going to be coming up with a new one here soon. So stay tuned for that. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Sorry,
One
go ahead.
last thing. Roquan Smith was the highest paid middle linebacker in the league, and he didn't have an agent.
That's right. And the Ravens just paid him. The Ravens are just like, yeah, we're going to give you I think it was $100 million for 5 years.
Yeah, he was the highest paid middle linebacker.
Yeah. And it was like over a 5-year period, like $20 million. So that's really confusing too, right? Like why not pay Lamar?
Yeah, there's a lot of it that doesn't make sense, but also it may be that Lamar has just in the beginning it was like a little friction, no big deal, but it may have gotten to a point where even if they do pay him, there's always going to be, it's like, somebody cheats on you and you decide, hey, I still want to be with you, but there's always a little bit of resentment that you can't get over.
Yeah.
It's like if the Ravens, would they be able to let bygones be bygones at this point, or have they crossed into? I think that moment that Roquan Smith signed that, it may have crossed into, this unrepairable, zone here that Lamar might be in, and it just might be time to go somewhere else. But I do think Lamar Jackson is a Raven. Like I can't see him in any other uniform.
Me neither.
Even though he hasn't been there for a long time, it just seems
feels
weird
right.
that he would. Yeah, it feels right.
Yeah, feels right. All right, let's move on to the third quarterback. Someone that Bill is actually going to be excited we're talking about. Daniel Jones.
Danny Jones.
Is he a $45 million QB, Kyle? Because when he switched over to agencies, he went from CAA to Athletes First Agency. And that move has reportedly precipitated him seeking a deal worth as much as $45 million per year. Now, Bill just said, I've got my own problems here. I think $190 million for 5 years gets it done. Kyle, is Daniel Jones a $45 million quarterback?
No, he's not.
One season. It's one season that he did really well.
One season. I think there was something like he threw, I don't know if it's 320 or 230, threw over that many yards like only twice, and also came in with like all these restrictions, like they didn't trust him to make big throws because they didn't want him to turn the ball over. And then towards the end of the season, they're like, hey, let's just let it rip and see what there is there. Maybe there's some potential there. And then they did like what they saw. And I understand Daniel Jones trying to, get a contract done when his value's at his highest. That's what an agent should be doing. But at the same time, just because they're doing all the right things at the right time doesn't mean it makes any sense to the people that are in the organization. So I think it makes sense what he's doing. And as far as negotiating, this is hopefully not a realistic thing, but this is just one of those times where you put out a number so high that a compromise still feels like an overpay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's you're overachieving on the number, and you land at a number where you're just like, I didn't expect to get that. Fuck yeah,
Yeah.
sign that.
So yeah, I think Daniel Jones is, if he, let's say he plays next season like he played in the playoffs against the Vikings, but he kind of maintains that throughout the whole season. I think then he could ask maybe for that kind of money. If he had, every game he's thrown 3 touchdown passes, he's a threat running the ball, he made really good reads. That Vikings game, he looked like a franchise quarterback. And I said, okay, the Giants have themselves a franchise quarterback, but also having a young quarterback also puts you in a Super Bowl window, because now you can pay pieces and DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham, and you can start doing things. Well, if he asks for $45 million a year, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a window, and that's just the truth. I mean, Joe Burrow, they were able to bring so much talent in because all of their players that are really good you can think of are in rookie contracts. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow himself, yeah.
It's so I don't know what his initial contract was. It was probably for 4 years, and I think this will be his 5th year, because I think they declined his 2-year option or something like that. So they declined it so that at the end of the season, if he sucked, they could back out. Well, the Giants kind of screwed themselves too, because if they would have, accepted that option, 2-year option, they wouldn't, they wanted a way that they could get out easily if he sucked, but they were betting on that to happen. And now that didn't happen, they're like, so what do we do now?
Exactly.
And Daniel Jones, I mean, I just don't know if there's even a team in the entire league that would pay him $45 million a year. And this is why off-season negotiation is so fun to talk about, is because you just hear the most off-the-wall shit. You know what I mean? Like, Daniel Jones wants $45 million. I'm like, that's what Lamar Jackson wants, and we don't even know if Lamar Jackson was worth that. Now Daniel Jones comes out, it's like, shut up. Go back to your room.
That's more than Patrick Mahomes is getting. Josh Allen is getting.
Well, that's like what Mahomes is getting.
Yeah, and it's just like, what? And I remember reading that and just kind of like literally like opening my eyes as wide as they can, and I'm like, there's no way Daniel Jones gets that. Now, they can franchise tag him, and he can make about $32.5 million per year, to $35 million if he can cash in on his great year that he had. I really think the Giants are going to franchise tag him and just call it a day after that. I really can't see them. And even though Bill said that, right, 190 for 5 years, I can't see that being something that the Giants do with a quarterback who's had one good year. Now, look, the year that he had a really good year,
he had 4 good games, not even one good year.
Not even an entire year, really. Let's call it what it is, right? Like, he had a select few good games. We had Dabble in there. Yeah, we had Dabble. We had Dabble in there his first year with Daniel Jones, and they both exceeded expectations. So can you look at that and really just be like, let's have him as our long-term answer when also you're also looking at a Saquon contract that you also have to be able to pay Saquon, because let's be honest, Saquon's the best offensive threat you got. A lot of people after that injury thought Saquon's done. Saquon, like, it's over. Like, Saquon is not going to be the same running back anymore. Now you have to pay Saquon. Do you pay Saquon or do you pay Daniel Jones? Can you pay both? And if you pay both, what are you looking at a contract? Are you looking at $190 million like Bill's saying? And what are you paying Saquon? Do you pay a running back anymore? Like, nobody pays running backs anymore, right? So what?
Me and Bill talked about that last week.
Yeah. So I don't know now. I think they franchise tag Daniel Jones, and I do think they sign Saquon. They're going to sign him for a ridiculous amount of money, I think, because again, we have to stick true to what we say, right? You don't pay running backs in this league anymore. You can just draft a guy, and he's the next up. That's how it goes. But I think they franchise tag Daniel Jones. I don't think they give him a long-term answer. I don't think they give him a long-term contract. Sorry.
Yeah, and you look at, we pulled up like the highest paid running backs, and it was like Ezekiel Elliott. And it's like Ezekiel Elliott he had such a bad season. His longest rush of the entire year was 29 yards. That is not,
Wow.
and then there was a lot of other running backs that were just really high on the list. But the number that Saquon Barkley at this point re-signing, he would be up there with the highest paid running backs for sure. He would be in that top 1-2. And Christian McCaffrey's the only one that I could see being highly paid, is because he can line up as a receiver. He just like does so much for his team. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't do what CMC does for the 49ers, for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And he's not even the best running back on their team. So Saquon Barkley won a lot of football games for the Giants.
Yeah.
Just him, all by himself, because people, they weren't game planning of the vintage Saquon Barkley, so they kept winning, and then teams were like, let's just shut down the running back, and then eventually Daniel Jones could throw. I really do think, I totally agree with you. You have to keep both of these guys. So I think what they should do is they should sign Saquon Barkley. I think they should sign him to a 4-year deal, because I don't think running backs should get deals more than 4 years, just because the tread on the tires.
Yeah.
You need to reevaluate probably every 4 years what a guy is worth. Like, look at Ezekiel Elliott. If they could they're going to reevaluate that this season, and I don't think that they're going to keep him or his contract. So I think they have to do that, and then franchise. There's 2 franchise tags. There's an exclusive franchise tag where other teams can't come in and trade for you. So that would like protect a player. And then there's like a cheaper franchise tag where other teams can negotiate with you, but you pay like, I think it's like 12 million less. Yeah. I would do that one. I wouldn't even exclusively franchise tag Daniel Jones. I would be like, hey, if somebody wants to come in and pay you $45 million a year, then so be it. But not only will that not happen, not only will that not happen, but maybe if we franchise tag you in that way, you'll understand that no team would have signed you for that deal. It's not a Giants thing. You know what I mean? It's like the NFL kind of agrees you're not worth $45 million. And I think you got to at least have one season of like, you got to play like Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. And if you can't do that, then you don't get to make that money. Like, it's just silly that we even have to have this conversation almost.
I would even say if you can play like Josh Allen for a year, because Josh Allen can run. He can run probably just as good as Jones can, or Jones is just as good as Allen can. If you could play like Josh Allen for a year, now we're talking, right? Like, now we're talking big bucks. Like, now we're talking franchise quarterback status. If you can play like him for a year, then yeah, let's do it. And Bill's got an answer right here. He said, we play him on a tag. He doesn't do as well since this season has a harder schedule and he loses value, and we tag him again for $38 million again next year. That's definitely an option, because like you said, not only are you going to franchise tag him and on the cheaper one to prove to him that, look, no team is going to want to trade for you, give you that extra $12 million and extend you as a franchise quarterback for $45 million. There's no way that happens. And they're trying to prove it to him. And he's also trying to prove that, hey, I deserve that $45 million a year. So I think the franchise tag, while it sucks because, you got to play for this team and you don't necessarily have a deal, why not bet on yourself? That's the best thing I think you can do in the NFL. You have all these people doing it. And like I said earlier, usually it works out on the player side. Like, there are some times where it doesn't, and that's just because that player just kind of sucks at the end of it, But in Daniel Jones's case, if he plays like Josh Allen, there's going to be teams coming for him for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of these negotiations seem like we're against the player. You know what I mean? The Lamar Jackson, the Danger, but the reality is the players that are actually worth that money, they don't get in a negotiation. Like Mahomes was in his contract talk for like a month, and they were hashing out, okay, is it $500 million? Okay,
Half a
sure, here you
billion?
go.
Okay, cool.
It's like there's
Yeah,
no questions to be asked. So like
yeah.
normally the reason it seems like we're like always like I wouldn't do it is because the fact that the negotiations happening is
Hmm.
the is we're all thinking the same thing. You're not worth $45 million,
Yeah,
and the fact is there's only maybe 3 quarterbacks in the league that are, and you're not on that list. Like, are
yeah,
you Joe Burrow? Do you bring the
yeah.
value Joe Burrow brings to the Bengals, to the Giants? Absolutely not.
Nope.
You're still like, even if you have a great year next year, you're not even 1 year away from that. You're a couple years. Like, can you go to the AFC or NFC championship game back to back? That's what this guy's doing. Mahomes is doing that. Okay, there's your second guy. And then Josh Allen probably is the third guy that's like, yeah, he's definitely worth that kind of money. And now
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is in that mix. But it just feels like, yeah, it just feels like he's like, I don't know if he's drinking. It's the off season.
He's got into his parents' liquor cabinet.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is, man. But that's
Uh,
not it. That's
no,
not it.
it's not it. So we will see. Obviously, Bill's going to be following this very, very closely. Bill, hopefully your Giants can, make a move for Daniel Jones, but like you said, in a reasonable way. That they're able to sign him because he did look
Yeah.
good last year for a few games.
Imagine being
But
the owner and waking up to that. You're like, 4 million, four or
and
5 million. No, 45.
yeah, and like Kyle said, as fans, we're not necessarily like, don't pay this fucking guy. We want the players to get paid because owners make a ton more money from the NFL than the players do. We're not saying that. What we're saying is like the market. The
Yeah,
market is
it's
not
the
there for
market.
Daniel Jones. The market is definitely not there for Daniel Jones. Another thing, because of the market and the prices that are paid to quarterbacks, if you pay a guy who does not turn out to be a franchise quarterback for your team, you're handicapping your team for a long time. And as fans, we want to see playoffs. We want to see Super Bowls. We want to see franchise players. We want to see consistency. Like, that's a lot of shit that you are handicapping for a team. And as a fan, you don't want to see it. Again, you just don't want to see it. But let's move on now to another player because this has already been a very busy offseason. Bobby Wagner and the Rams have parted ways, and that was after 1 year on his 5-year, $50 million deal. And just to kind of, sorry, I'm talking through burps. We're sold. Just to give you a quick little snapshot of Wagner's year.
Hey,
32-year-old Bobby Wagner posted 140 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, which is a career high,
that's
5
really good.
passes defended, and 2 interceptions while playing all 17 games. He earned himself second all-team All-Pro honors. It was his 9th straight year making an All-Pro team. And he was the top linebacker, according to Pro Football Focus, for that NFL season. So
Yeah,
I don't know. This is more of a cap move for the Rams because they're not
totally.
going to give a 32-year-old Bobby Wagner that much money when they are deep in the red here. And Wagner, capitalizing on his great year, which he played all 17 games, like it said, wants to maybe can either get more money or will play for a contender, this season. What do you think about the move, Kyle?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Like the whole F them picks thing, and it's like bringing in Bobby
It's coming
Wagner.
back.
It was all about, let's win another Super Bowl. Let's do it this year.
Yeah.
So the fact is they weren't able to do that. And Bobby Wagner, I don't know if you mentioned it in his stats, he didn't miss a single snap. He played all 17 games. And you got to think, okay, so what is the value this person is bringing to our team versus the value that we're paying, okay? And obviously Bobby Wagner is one of the best linebackers in the NFL, and he is worth what he's being paid, but is he worth that to a team? Going back to, are you worth that to the team though? The Rams didn't win a lot of games and you didn't miss a single one. So that means you're not the thing that's, taking them over the top. You're not
Yeah.
that. It's one thing to add an extra piece, And it's like, we're adding Bobby Wagner. We're going to be so good, right? And there's
Yeah.
plenty of teams that could probably say, look, we have a really young linebacker core. If we added Bobby Wagner, I think the Broncos might maybe make a move for him. It's
Oh.
like, if you can add to like what the Ravens did, they had a good defense, added Roquan Smith. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
those are the moves, the Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins.
Yep.
But in the Rams position, it's like, we need a lot of different positions right now. And having a great linebacker it's like having a really nice sports car outside of a bad home. It's like,
Yeah.
let's
Did you need
let's make
that?
yeah, it's like, let's make
Yeah.
this make sense here. Let's get rid of Bobby Wagner, free up the cap, because we could sign maybe 3 or 4 players and get some draft capital. Oh no, because they released him. Forget about that.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
could sign 4 players and improve, our defensive ends, improve a cornerback position, improve a strong safety, and get a linebacker. He won't be as good as you, Bobby, but he will be, all these collective pieces together will
Mm-hmm.
perform, better defensively than just having Bobby Wagner on our team.
And they might be younger. They might have a higher ceiling. They might be there longer for cheaper too. So, like you said, all things to think about, as well as the cap space that they clear up because of the fuck them picks mentality.
Yeah, yeah, and I mentioned the Broncos because last year when Seattle released Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson, or traded them like on the same day,
Mm-hmm.
there were like the only 2 pieces left on the team from the Legion of Boom, and Russ was tweeting out like, "We want Bobby Wagner," whatever,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get him to come to Denver, and Sean Payton's trying to make his big splash, so that's something I'm looking out for. But I just think it makes a lot of sense to have a guy like that on your team. And I think there's going to be teams lining up to pay him what the Rams were paying him. And it was probably mutual. I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of teams keep going to LA and players are like, for whatever reason, they just don't like it. And I think part of it is that LA is such a big market
Mm-hmm.
that it's like when the Lakers won the Super Bowl, you know what I mean? There's so much going on that it was just
The
like,
Lakers won the Super Bowl?
I mean, the Lakers won the NBA championship game, right?
I missed that.
The Rams won the Super Bowl, and it
Yeah.
was just like it's not like a huge deal like it is like when the Chiefs win it, the whole town shuts down for the
Yeah.
parade. I'm sure they would have had a parade, but football is not the most important thing to LA. Von
Yeah.
Miller does only half a season in LA, and he's like, I'm not home. He makes specific comments
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't feel like I'm at home here, because some of these guys like Bobby Wagner also playing for Seattle, they know what it's like to be, football is so important to, my town that I played for.
Yes. Yes.
And I think sometimes people just need to be in a town like that to feel like they're at home,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what they grew up, on. Like, oh, in college, I was walking down the hallway and everybody was like, it was such a big deal. And then I got to LA and it was like, hey, there's a lot of adults doing a lot of different things. There's tech space. There's just so many different worlds. And, I can go to the grocery store and I don't, see people wearing my jersey and stuff like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and it's
It's not the same. It just doesn't hit the same. No.
yeah, so I do think this could have just been like a mutual thing where both parties, would
Mm-hmm.
probably prefer this. So, um, I definitely don't know why Bobby Wagner would have signed that big of a deal. I think it was a 4-year, 50 million or something
No,
like
5 year,
that.
50. Yep.
5-year 50 if there was going to be a release at the end of 1 year. That lets me to believe a little bit that this Bobby had something to say too about, his contract and staying in LA.
And I think it was mostly too, or maybe it was like what you said in the beginning. Let's go out and try to win another championship. Right? They still have a lot of players from that core team when they won the Super Bowl. So Bobby Wagner is like, this is probably one of my better chances to win another Super Bowl. Obviously, it didn't go that way, but he was able to show that I am still a very valuable linebacker, and I will go to a team where I can be valuable. Like you said, if a team picks up Bobby Wagner, like a championship ready team is ready to pick up Bobby Wagner, that's just another piece added to a already like ready to win team, right? So that might be the reason. And also it was, I don't know, man. I just, again, the fuck them picks theory, it's just come back to bite him in the ass. I know when we first started this show, I was very much about it. Like, I will absolutely take a win, a Super Bowl win once every decade if it means I get to see. And in a small way, I still believe that, but you're in hell. You're in football hell for a long time, right? So maybe there's a reason why franchises don't go this way. So where do you think who could you see, what team could you see picking up Bobby Wagner?
And real quick, we talk about Bobby Wagner being like the best linebacker in the NFL, and you saw his deal 5-year $50. So that just shows you like how much money $240 million is for 5 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's an absurd amount of money. So that's why Daniel Jones. That's why we're gonna have to say no.
Sorry, buddy.
Okay. So I think the Bengals would be a good spot. I think they just need one more like just dog on defense to just really like our defense is just as good as our offense. I think that would make the Bengals, honestly, they would be probably my Super Bowl favorite if they could get a guy like Bobby Wagner on their team.
Chiefs would be a good team too.
I think the Chiefs, but I also don't know if the Chiefs, after winning a Super Bowl, feel like they need to do this to win a Super Bowl.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
I think Minnesota should probably pick up the phone and start dialing, as Wolf of Wall Street would say. And
pick up the phone, start dialing.
I think the Bears too. I think the Bears are needing a real veteran leader. Roquan Smith is gone. It would be kind of weird though. It's like they wouldn't pay Roquan, but then they pay Bobby Wagner. I don't know if
even if we're doing the same deal that LA did from last offseason, that's $50 million that we're saving, not paying Roquan. Technically, right? Because it's literally half of what Roquan wanted. So fuck that. But veteran leadership on the Bears defense would be huge. So I agree with that for sure.
I think they will restructure, because if they would have traded him, then I think the team kind of takes on that contract. But he released him. So I don't know how that works. Like if somebody picks him up, do they have to make their own contract, or do they have to honor the contract he's currently under, or is it totally void? I
think it's totally void at that point because the Rams at this point are really just trying to make some space on their cap, and that's really it. Jinja has a good comment here. Kyle, what is up with you still having that Christmas tree in the back?
So I don't know if you guys know or not, but this entire tree has Broncos ornaments. Like every ornament on it is
it's a part of only football now.
Yeah, it's a part of the show.
Yeah.
I thought about it, taking it down, because I didn't want people to think that our episodes were old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I can't.
We can't do it.
Yeah, unless you guys start a petition, I'll keep it there. Good question, though.
All right, let's move on to a couple of staff hirings. The first one and biggest one, Kyle, Eric Bieniemy is now the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. He is going to be working under what is his name? I never know. Ron Rivera. Rivera as offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. He I don't know what to think of this hire, and honestly, it's probably on both sides, because I think Washington comes out on top of this deal no matter what. They got somebody who has had multiple interviews for a head coach, has won 2 Super Bowls under the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes regime, right? And to be fair, this is going to be the first time that Eric Bieniemy actually calls plays, because in Kansas City, Andy Reid was a play caller. he was the one, giving the
Yes.
offense to Patrick Mahomes. So this is going to be a huge test for Eric Bieniemy, and that's why I think Washington comes out on top, because Washington has been an offense that has never gone above, I think, number 16 overall in the NFL for a really long time, or at least as long as Ron Rivera's been a coach. So this is a good test for Eric Bieniemy, and you take somewhat of a low risk for a possible high reward and Super Bowl experience as a Washington Commanders. You were able to bring that into the organization. Dan Snyder's trying to sell the team. You've got a couple of good offensive talented people there. God, what's his name? The receiver that they just signed or extended there. I forgot what his name. Yeah, Scary Terry. That's who it was. Scary Terry McLaurin. You got Sam Howell, who's probably going to be QB1, because I think Heineke's going into. I think Heineke's going into free agency.
Sam Howell will not be QB1 when the season starts.
So we'll see. Well, that's a whole different conversation. But we're talking about Bieniemy. What do you think of this hire, Kyle? After all the interviews Bieniemy's had, he's lost out on head coaching jobs for a long time. What do you think of this hiring by Washington?
I think it's the natural progression for. Okay, so it's tough. It's tough because I don't know yet, because Eric Bieniemy hasn't called plays, and as an offensive coordinator, I do think that that's a really important part of your job. You also have to be really good with people, but you can't be good at people and bad at play calling. Then you're just Nathaniel Hackett. Everybody loved Nathaniel Hackett, but here's the thing. In Green Bay, Matt LaFleur called the offensive plays, and Nathaniel Hackett didn't. And we made Nathaniel Hackett our head coach, and you saw what happened. So it can be very hit or miss, but I do think being on a Super Bowl team, your value is worth – your career deserves to progress. Now, I don't think it deserves at this point to be head coach caliber. You have to call plays and be successful. And I just think – Washington said, you know what? He's been around Andy Reid. And that's the part that I totally agree with, and I would take the chance, because sometimes it's not so much about what you're doing, but it's where you are and who around you is doing. You learn to adapt good habits when you're around good people. You learn how to speak to people when you're around good communicators. And that's why all the time Tom Brady got injured, the backups would come in and then get deals, Matt Castle and Jimmy Garoppolo. It's because they were learning how to, not even intentionally. I don't even think it's something you have to try. If you're just around Tom Brady, you're going to start walking and throwing and reading defenses the way Tom Brady does. And in Eric Bieniemy's, perspective, he's been close up with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And now here's the hurdle, though. There's no Andy Reid in Washington, and there's no Patrick Mahomes in Washington. So now, can Eric Bieniemy, with just being around those kind of people, will that be enough to actually make a significant difference without having a quarterback? And we said Sam Howell. Will it be effective? And to me, that's where I lose. That's where I get lost. It's like, it makes sense if these other pieces are together, which the Commanders do not have. And I think it's going to be tricky, but I do think he knew if he was going to be a head coach, he would have to call plays, and Andy Reid's not going to give up calling plays. But just me being around them and winning the Super Bowl has made my value high enough where I can take that next step. And if I do succeed at that, I'll become a head coach. It makes perfect sense that he would do it. But I do think until they get the quarterback situation figured out, it's just kind of, it's a good intended hire, but I just think it'll fall short without the league's most important position figured out.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that's why Bieniemy is not a head coach right now, is because he wasn't calling plays in Kansas City. Was he a big part of the offense? Sure, Andy Reid can say that. Do we know that? No, we don't. Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid are the only guys that know if Eric Bieniemy was a huge part of that offense, which it seems like he was. But that devalued him as a head coaching candidate. And that's why I think, like you said, it's almost like the natural progression. The next step is to be an offensive coordinator who goes into a team, who calls plays and can establish himself as a play caller, like you said, because you see head coaches calling plays, whether it be on defense or offense, and they're able to do both head coaching and coordinator positions. So you need to be able to juggle those two positions if need be, and that's probably why Eric Bieniemy is not a coach today. Now, like I said, I think Washington gets the better of this deal because they are kind of taking somewhat of a small risk for a possible big reward. And one other thing, as we have Kenny Miller, cheers, Kenny, thanks for joining the stream. He's saying Rivera for one more year. Now, that brings up a question for me, is if Rivera is working as a head coach this season, the entire season, maybe they don't have a great year, but the offense is doing really well under Bieniemy. Does Bieniemy take the head coaching job? Is this a possibility? Is this like a small stepping stone for Bieniemy in a sense where it's like Rivera does not seem to want to coach the Commanders anymore, but if somehow Bieniemy can prove himself as an offensive coordinator, he'll get the head coaching position when Rivera eventually exits or gets fired.
Yeah, I think anytime you have an organization that keeps head coaches for a really long time, Jacksonville was known for it until Urban Meyer. The Cowboys are, that way. And here are the Commanders with the same kind of philosophy. I think those guys are more likely to promote within their organization than teams that hire and fire really quick. So I do think this could be, they asked him about that and he said, I like to be in the present. I don't like to think about that kind of stuff, which is the right approach. Like,
it's the right way to answer that question.
Yeah. It's definitely something that he's thought about, but it's not something he's going to talk about because it's just natural to think about it. But it's also important that he's just a good coordinator first. And I think if he can go there and for 1 year, put up, let's say they're top 14 in offense, whether it's running, passing, total yards, I think then he could move into being the head coach. And I think he would.
And another way of looking at it too is if they fire Ron Rivera in the middle of the year, all of a sudden Bieniemy is the interim. And now if he's able to orchestrate a good rest of the season where he's the interim head coach, you may as well make him head coach. He's interviewed so many fucking times. May as well give it to him, right?
Yeah, I think he would. I think he would get it.
Yeah, so we will see about Eric Bieniemy. But so far, he is the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, and we will have that conversation on whether Howell or maybe Lamar Jackson will be that quarterback in Washington.
Wow.
I knew it was going to get you with that one. Let's move on to something that Kyle, I don't know if you're excited or not, but Vance Joseph makes his return to Denver as the Denver defensive coordinator. There was talk about Vic Fangio coming back, but he went on to Miami to be their defensive coordinator. But you get a former head coach, defensive-minded guy, back in Denver. Kyle, I'm going to just throw it to you. You're the Denver Broncos fan. What do you think about this move?
Yeah, so I like it and I don't like it. The only reason I didn't like it is because I wanted Rex Ryan. But it depends. Like, if Rex Ryan turned down the Broncos, then I like it more. But if Rex Ryan was an option and we went with Vance Joseph, then I don't like it. I do think Sean Payton wanted a defensive coordinator that is aggressive. If you look at the people that he interviewed, Rex Ryan, Vance Joseph, they run an attacking 3-4 defense, a lot of blitz packages. And that's what he's going to get with Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph was a good enough defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos to want to make him a head coach. Okay, so at some point, they saw something in him that was, worthy of being a head coach. And sometimes it's hard to get somebody once they're a head coach to go back to being a coordinator, let alone do it for the same team they were the head coach for.
Yeah.
So that tells me that there's really two reasons that Vance took this job. And he also interviewed with Philly for their defensive coordinator spot. So he had an option to go to Philly, and he wanted to, I don't know if Philly offered him a contract, but the fact that they interviewed him, there was interest there. In the Broncos, I think they just thought, look, Vance Joseph, will you be interested in taking this job? And the reason he said yeah was because, number one, the Broncos have a really good defense, right? That's really important.
Yeah.
Like Arizona, he didn't have much to work with over there. Like it was, I mean, you have Patrick Surtain, who might be the best cornerback in the league, but he's definitely top three. And then you have Justin Simmons, who will be the leader, who already played for Vance Joseph as a head coach. And there's just a lot to love as far as personnel goes. And then Sean Payton, I don't think he takes this job unless he is in absolute love with Sean Payton.
Yeah.
And I think that he just really trusts Sean Payton. And I think we should too as a fan base. So I like it just because it is a big name, especially around Denver. I watched the HBO Hard Knocks thing, and I remember thinking, man, Vance Joseph's actually a really good dude. Like, he would walk with his players into work, like at 5 a.m. They would park like a mile away from the stadium and walk like with the defense and just talk. And he was showing like his house off on one of the episodes, like his actual home in Arizona. And he was like, this is my first game ball, like as a Denver Bronco. I'm always going to be grateful for my time there. Like, so I watched that episode and I was like, wow, it's like, it's just nice
cool
to see. Yeah. And I could tell like his family and his wife was there and she was like, oh yeah, we love, Denver. And it was like it didn't end nasty, it didn't end in someone being fired, which it did, but they handled it really well. And, so I'm not surprised that door stayed open after seeing them kind of talk about Denver in that light. But I think that Rex Ryan would have been a better option. So I don't know. If as long as we don't regress, I think I like it. But I just don't want to see us go, to like 16th defense, like bottom half of the league. Like then. But Sean Payton, you know what I mean? Like he's making the decisions right now. He's putting his staff together. He interviewed people that have been out of, in retirement for 10 years. He interviewed, Vic Fangio. And I just have to believe that Sean Payton knows what he's doing. He knows what he's looking for. And he pulled the trigger here because Vance Joseph was the best fit for where Sean Payton's trying to take the Broncos. And as a fan, I just have to, smile and wave, just
smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
Yeah.
I'm
not smarter than Sean Payton, So.
Yeah. In a way it's like, honestly, being a Chicago fan, like a lot of this turnover for a lot of our major league teams has been like, we kind of just got to trust that they're going to do the right thing, first 2-3 years. With Sean Payton, with an owner that is a 100 billionaire, what are they worth? Like $400 billion or something like that?
67 billion.
Something, something ridiculous. Like you've got a great owner who's willing to spend money. You've got a head coach who's proven, and now you've got a quarterback that needs to prove it and has had a successful career, but maybe he had a bad 1 year. So now you have all these things and a great defense on top of that. Now it's time to just kind of put your trust in what's going on. And if it works out, then fucking awesome. That's going to be great because then that Denver Broncos team is going to come back to, that next level of prominence and be a good team in the NFL. So I get you in that whole, like, we have to just smile and be like, yeah, this is happening right now, right? Like whether it be in a good or bad way. It is what it is.
And that's the difference between having Nathaniel Hackett and Sean Payton. Right? It's like
really
Nathaniel Hackett makes this move, and it's like, what are you doing? But like Sean Payton makes it, and it's like, okay. So, I mean, it's just when you fully trust somebody, and it's been, I don't even know how long, like over a decade since I had a player or a person on our team that I could be like, any decision he makes, I fully trust. Probably when Peyton Manning would recruit a wide receiver, I'd be like, that's who you like? Okay. There must be something to him. We'll see how it works out. But like having Sean Payton as your head coach just makes life so much easier in these moments where you're conflicted.
So, and then, another thing to bring up, Ginger brings up a good point. So if you go from top 5 to the 16th in defense, but you go from 30th to 5th in offense, he thinks that's worth the switch. What do you think about that as far as the Denver Broncos go?
Well, yeah,
because that's a big jump on offense.
It would be worth it, but I don't think Sean Payton being in charge of the offense has anything to do with the defense. So I think if we come up to number 5 offense, like that's an awesome thing, but our defense, if it regresses to a bottom half of the league, then I feel like that there has to be a firing, because just because, you're excelling on one side of the football doesn't give the other side of the football a longer leash and more grace. You have to play that type of defense like they played last year, whether Russell Wilson is the worst quarterback in the league or the best. That's the standard. So as a fan, it's like if I had to make a decision, I guess I would pick 16-5 versus 32-2, just because we would be more balanced. But and if I'm an actual GM of the team, like, I would be like, that is, there's no exception to be made because another side of the ball is improving. Like, you are still held to the standard. You should want to be the best defense, no matter how many touchdowns. And that's the problem I have with KC, is that they struggle so much on defense, but their offense is so good, and you can win like that. But I also don't think it's a good recipe. And I saw a Super Bowl, with the Seahawks and the Broncos, best offense in the league versus best defense in the league, and we got annihilated. If anything, I would rather have a 16th offense and a number 2 defense.
Okay, that's interesting. Me personally, I would lean more towards a better offensive team. But I wouldn't want to be, I would want to at least be top 10 to 12 in defense. If I have a top 5 offense, top 3 offense. And that's just me, and that's just because I'm a Bears fan, and I think I hope for unrealistic things that will never happen.
Well, we also have just like too much talent on the defense to be 16.
Yeah, you guys, and like I said, I think during our Groundhog episode, I was like, I don't think Denver will be as good on their defense, but I don't think they're gonna take such a step back where it's like, wow, what happened to the defense? It's more going to be like a gradual, like I said, what were you guys letting up? 14 or 20 points per game? I was like, okay, well, maybe you guys will let up 21 and a half points per game, and maybe like 10 more yards, 15 more yards overall in offense. Something like that. Something where it's not ridiculous, where it's just like you said, we need to make a firing right now because the step back is ridiculous. I still think Denver is going to be a very, very, very good defense next year.
Yeah, and I think being more aggressive comes with risks, and that means coming with more turnovers on the defensive side of the ball and also more touchdowns on offense. So it's just like a give and take thing. Like, Sean Payton is like, hey, I want you to force a lot of turnovers, but by doing that, we're going to, Patrick Surtain is going to go against elite receivers one-on-one. There's no more zone. There's just going to be a lot more risks. So I think it's natural to see maybe points per game go down a little bit in a bad way, but I could also see interceptions and sacks go way up. So it's just like, pick your poison.
Exactly. You really do pick your poison at one point or the other. It's tough to have a top 5 offense and defense. And I mean, at one point, what was it? The Chargers had that with Phillip Rivers, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So I don't know what that means, but it's tough to do that.
Only the Chargers can do that.
Only the Chargers could do that, though. Yeah. All right. Well, we're running a little over an hour and a half. We were going to talk XFL, but we're actually going to do that on our Monday episode. And just with that, I will say Mondays. Catch us on Mondays, because Kyle, what are we doing on Mondays?
We're going to be doing A, OnlyFans feet, B, trivia, C, drinking beer out of an old shoe, or D, breaking flat screen TVs.
I'm going to go with B, Kyle, trivia.
You are right. The answer is B, trivia. And I think Liam got most of our trivia questions right. Some of you guys commented on the video and put in your trivia answers. We're going to add it to the leaderboard.
Yep.
Honesty and integrity. Can't
Scout's honor.
we assume
Scout's honor.
Scott's honor, yeah. That was gross. I really did that.
You sick fuck.
Yeah, so trivia is on Monday, and
yep.
We're trusting you guys not to Google it.
Yeah, we are going to be, like Kyle said, trivia on Mondays. It's going to be every Monday in the off season until the regular season begins again. And our Thursday episodes, like today, is going to be more news around the NFL oriented. So we hope to see you guys on Monday, because Monday is more of an interactive Kyle and I with you guys trivia, and then we do some Q&A on the back end. So it's going to be a very interactive type of episode here on Only Football on Mondays until the regular season starts up again. So we hope for max participation from everybody here. We usually started around the same time we started today, which was about 7 Central, 8 Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific time. So definitely check us out on Mondays for some Only Football NFL trivia. And then we're going to talk a little bit XFL possibly next week. Hopefully you guys are watching as background noise, because that's kind of how I have it. But definitely join us on Monday. Other than that, Kyle, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me. Oh, and next week we're going to start the episodic series. I just got back from all my traveling.
Yeah, you're right.
We're going to start it this week, but I literally just got back. And it's going to just be Only Football with Kyle. So definitely check that out too for football junkies that just need a little bit more before Thursday. I don't want you to withdraw. But you can find me at FTBL ONLY PODCAS. Only
T.
Football Only Podcast. Just sounds a little wrong. I can't get it.
Kyle's never going to get it right.
No, I got it wrong once, and now I do it every time. I don't know what the deal is.
Ginger saying, I promise I'll be there for Trivia Monday. I missed last week and I'm pissed. Ginger, we hope to see you next Monday. You could follow me on Twitter at @AndNowRick to check out all my takes and very little Bears takes that I have, because I don't know what's going on. And you can check out the Star 6 Media Twitter at _Star 6 Media. And go follow the Star 6 Media Instagram. We just got over 100 followers, so we're very excited about that. We're going to be posting our schedule, posting Kyle's Only Football with Kyle episodes on Instagram and here on YouTube, exclusively to Instagram and YouTube. So go check that out every Wednesday when we do post it up. So that will be exciting for Instagram and here on YouTube. And yeah. Other than that, listen to us on Spotify, Apple. If you missed the episodes, go watch us on YouTube. And like our channel, like our pics, our Instagram. Go follow us, share our stuff. We hope we can earn some likes and some shares and some follows from all you guys here on Only Football. Kyle, what do you got for the chives? What's the final word from Kyle? The chives from Kyle. That's what I'm going to call it. Chives from Kyle. Kyle, chives from Kyle. Go.
The chives from Kyle is, I don't know if you guys saw about Brock Purdy, who postponed his UCL repair surgery. It was scheduled last week, but there's ongoing inflammation, and doctors don't feel that they can actually perform the surgery. A little unique to him, and some people are wondering if that's because he played during the game. But everybody that said Brock Purdy was backing out of a moment that was too big for him, I just want you to eat your words.
Couldn't throw the ball. It was impossible for him. So if you're saying that, fuck you.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you to Tyler. Thank you to James. Thank you to Ginger for catching us after work. Liam, our trivia leader right now. Bill. We also had, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, and he was right here. Kenny on here. Thank you all of you guys for being on the live stream with us, interacting with us, getting us your comments. We appreciate you. Just thank you guys for being on here. From me, thank you guys again, and we will see you guys on Monday. See ya!